This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lilypub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Book.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 36, Wiki World Building.
Hello. Welcome to episode 36 of the Zettelcast, a special Memorial Day edition. We don't have Mel with us today. He is enjoying Memorial Day with company. So this is the four of us, and we are talking about a wonderful new add-on that we have to our story writing process. And we have Julianne Scherer to thank for this. She has set up for us a private wiki where we can start saving information about our characters. And before we get started talking about what we may have saved for our characters, Julianne, would you be so kind as to tell us a little bit about the wiki you've set up for us?
Sure. So the name of the wiki, the server, is called Mirahees. And Mirahees is an implementation of a wiki farm that you can go and have your own free wikis. It exists just to be nice. And when we talked about wikis before, we were talking about fandom. And it turns out fandom does not offer the ability to have a private wiki. But, with the help of internet search, alternatives to fandom were offered, and Mirahees was a very well-liked one. Although Mirahees went through a period where its future was uncertain, but it has now been rescued by a foundation that is keeping it alive. So Mirahees, the wiki aspect of it is based off of MediaWiki, and MediaWiki is the wiki engine behind Wikipedia. So the features that you might see over in Wikipedia, what underlies them is MediaWiki, and MediaWiki is free and open source, and you can install it on your own server if you want, or you can go with a service like Mirahees, which will do it for you, and made it very easy. I was able to create this private Roanoke wiki for ourselves in minutes, once I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So we're just getting started with it. Some of us have more experience working with wikis than others, and so we've got the little bit of a growing pains there. But what we have started out with is just a front page that has links to other pages for characters, timeline, the world, and some of those haven't even been built out yet. Like the world is, even though my story cards are like a big old pack of world story cards, I haven't transferred those into the wiki yet. But we got started with the characters because our own Deb Hart said, I need a place where I can look up the characters, because if I'm going to be interacting in my stories with the characters, I now know that I need to know more about them. And I thought, yes, indeed. So I got on there and I created all the characters for the characters that I have talked about. And they're not fully fleshed out yet. But Kathleen said, for our assignment, why don't we flesh out one? Each flesh out one. And so I fleshed out Jenna a little bit more. And what we'll see in, I think, probably mine and also Kathleen's, is that we are utilizing the wiki to replicate a tool that I had built, inspired again by Deb's work, to have a worksheet where you've got all of the character traits that may really affect a character in their storyline, marked out in terms of where that trait is in the character's zone of awareness, how much they're aware of it and how much it's like, and where the struggle might be. And so I had created a few months ago over on LilyPub a worksheet to plot the awareness of a character over time. And it could be over the course of an entire story. It could be over the course in a scene. You can choose your time scale, but it just allows for the fact that, well, these things, they don't, if they just stay where they are, then you don't have a story. So Kathleen, what else would you like me to say about this?
I think you did a fantastic job. So you want to continue speaking and show us Jenna and show us this tool. I'm going to show everyone the diagram that you based yours off of. This is a worksheet that Deb created. It's available on lilypub.org. It's a pad of 50, and you can plot out the character profile of any character in any story you're reading or writing. It's really handy. All the character traits are on a single page. I just love it. And Julianne, do you have a sample of the one that you made to show the story arc?
I probably do. It looks like this. And so moving across time, you've got indicators of where a character is situated with a particular trait. And so right here, I've done it in pencil, so it's very faint, but I'm using a little icon. And the icon represents one of 5 positions where the trait is in the character's zone of awareness. And so it can be in their pinnacle, which is essentially unaware. And Kathleen, you're gonna correct me. Pinnacle meaning unaware. Wing, which is occasionally aware and often not. It's sort of out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, but it does come into sight every once in a while. And it can create chaos in that position. And then the rudder, which I continually call a different name, but the rudder is the one where struggle is occurring, where the character knows that they're dealing with that it's in their present moment awareness a lot of the time. And once they have resolved some of their issues, that trait might go into the anchor position. It becomes something that they can kind of rely on. They have habitually conditioned themselves with regard to that trait to be fairly functional. And then the base trait is where, they've got that. It's just like part of their foundation of their personality. And so this is to me, you might have seen in the sheet that is one of our, actually it was your editor, Julia, who mentioned on LilyPub, hey, this really reminds me of sheet music. Yeah. Because the whole thing reminds me of music, because the state of a character to me is very much a state of harmony and dissonance. Mm-hmm. And as that situation, the configuration of the character changes over time, there's adding disharmony, harmony, depending on what the world throws at them. So this is hopefully going to be, it's all experimental, right? All of the worksheet, the plotting it over time, whether it will work as much as we hope it will work, remains to be seen. But it is certainly a great exercise to just push yourself through all the traits and say, for this character, where is that? Don't know? Skip it. If you do know, say, yeah, that's a thing. That's going to prove to be a thing. And figure out where it is at. Right now, we're still kind of at the starting point of the story. So what I did for Jenna was just at the starting point of the story, although I have my notions of where she's going to be going.
Thank you. You did a spectacular job of describing that, Julianne.
Oh, yay!
Yay. Okay, so now we're all hungry to see how this works for Jenna.
Okay. Well, I will share my screen, and what we'll do is just look at, so this is a private wiki, and what that means is that even if you are a Roanoke subscriber, you can't see this, and it's because it's full of spoilers.
Right.
But you might want to know about doing something like this, so this is why we're teasing you with it, because it's a way that, especially, we've got 5 authors who are trying to collaborate on a story, and the story is too big for any of us to hold in our heads, let alone collaborate. So this is the home page, and if you see something in red, that means it's a page that hasn't really been filled out yet. But we've got timeline full of spoilers, and we've got characters. And what we've got here, it's broken down in outline, and this should look like Wikipedia does to you when you've got things that have multiple headings and you've got a table of contents over on the left-hand side. It's very nice. And so we've got Jenna, who we have heard about before. We've got Grandpa, other people we've heard about, Estelle a little bit, and Sunny. Mentioned the Sentries, and people, I'm going to be talking about the Sentries a little bit later. But so just going over to Jenna, I'm going to look at her. Well, let's look at her here. So she's a woman in her early 20s. She's one of the lings of Roanoke. And if you think, what's a ling? Well, earthlings, they're lings. She's a self-taught master of her link, and she calls her link Eleanor, and she lives at home with her parents, Malcolm and Marjorie. So if we go to the page for Jenna Whitman, it is more full than this. What I found a way, and we'll be sharing these little tricks amongst ourselves. I found a way to use an extension to the wiki that allows you to mark certain sections and then just pull bits. So I marked an overview section in Jenna's page, and that's what we see here, but there's a lot more hiding underneath the surface. And so here we have her trait evolution. And I was able, not because I am brilliant, but because I'm persistent. Where programming is concerned, I thought, oh, there's a way to do this, then I'm going to do it. And so that was my weekend project, is make it possible for us to build out one of these things fairly easily for the authors. So anyway, so we'll just walk through what all of this is saying. So I went through every single trait and I decided where that was, but it's not necessarily that every single trait is going to play into the story. It was just for my own practice. But we've got constancy as a base trait. So this little icon here, where it's filled up at the bottom, is the base. Why don't we look at the examples of all the different kinds of icons? So we've got, this means wing, and that's where it was kind of, it's in mind sometimes. So with that thing that I was just pointing to was magnificence. It's in her mind sometimes. And what we have here, honesty. It's now honesty has a special meaning in these character traits that is not the same as we refer to honesty in colloquial English. So honesty is really about, you can see it's under self-assessment. Are you honest with yourself? Do you tell yourself the truth? And now this is not saying that she lies to herself. There's many things that she takes for granted, right? So she's gonna probably be confronted by something around this. But I think I'm just gonna go for some of these things that are going to play in the story. So self-control. She considers that to be, or it is an anchor. She's put together. She's a successful young woman. She's been a very kind of an honor student type, and very, very successful. But something is going to happen that's going to throw her a little bit out of whack. She's going to behave in a way that surprises her. And she's going to be confronted with what she considers at least to be a rather spectacular moment of lack of self-control. And that's going to be fun. And then we've got over here, wisdom, circumspection, and foresight. So she has, mentioning that she is a self-taught savant with the link. So she is operating in this world where the link exists like a guru. She knows how these things work. Or does she? And so these things, so that circumspection and foresight, circumspection means do you know how the world works around you? What's going on? And foresight is, can you predict what will happen? And she had enjoyed that as a base, and now it flops right up into the wing. Her whole world is kind of turned upside down somewhere along Act 2. And patriotism, now we don't necessarily have nationalities, but we have this group of people we've called the Sentries, which is kind of her group that she is part of with her family. And she has some fealty toward that group. It's unquestioned. It's going to be questioned in an interesting way in Act 3. So, anybody have any questions on this?
That was spectacular.
Yeah,
Great.
Thank you.
That was a nice, good learning demo. Thank you.
Fabulous. What else should I? On this, I think that I'll yield my time, and we'll be coming back to other parts of the wiki here.
Okay. Well,
Real good.
now did Deb, you mentioned that you did a wonderful story, but it's full of spoilers, so we can't discuss it at this time. Darn it. But Victoria, did you get a chance to play with the wiki at all with all of your stuff going on? Spectacular track award-winning grandson.
We were cooking for 2 days on the bleachers watching the state track meet, which we took 5 guys and we missed winning state by 2 points with just 5 runners. So they did spectacularly, won almost every event they were in. So no complaints. However, I have shown up late without my homework and a sunburn. I have a fantastic sunburn working. So that was my accomplishment.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And
now back to business.
Well, I did play with the wiki, which was my motivation in putting it out there as an assignment, because then I'd be forced to play with it. Otherwise, it would be on the pile of, gee, I'd like to look at that someday. But we've talked a lot about the character. I should mention one thing briefly.
Yeah.
The character traits are discussed in Writing with Emotion, my book, and we'll put in the show notes where you can get it. And in particular, if you have the book, there's a very convenient summary section in the middle of the book where you can do a quick lookup of all of the character traits and see them at a glance. Now, before Deb's magnificent sheet, that was as compact as you could get it. Now she's taken that and put all of that information right here. Also available from LilyPub. Well, I fleshed out my character Teresita, and I first wrote it all out in paragraph form, and then I discovered that Julianne had hinted at a couple of wiki tricks, but didn't say what they were. And about the time I was sighing and wishing that I had her magnificent diagram available in the wiki, I said, well, okay, I'm done. I'm going to play with the wiki tricks. And whoa, one of the wiki tricks was exactly what I wanted, which was the diagram that you saw of Julianne's. So, of course, I had to play with it with Teresita's. Mine isn't as developed as Julianne's, but I'll share. Okay, here's Teresita. And I began in paragraph mode, just describing who Teresita is. And Teresita is neurodivergent. She somehow missed learning language at an appropriate age. I haven't fleshed out how that occurred. But as a result, with the link, by the time she was beginning to acquire language, she was at an age where most people are already starting to use the link. And so she never really had the chance to practice with her age mates the way normal children learn language. So she missed getting normal language. And so that makes her appear to be challenged mentally. She'd function verbally as though she were a young child. So and then I fleshed out some of her character traits. She's relentlessly curious, and well, curiosity is the term that we use colloquially in the nomenclature of the character traits. That's docility, a readiness to learn. And so that's her base trait. And so here in the magnificent tool that Julianne has provided, here's docility as a base trait. And that's a totally firm base trait for Teresita. She's going to carry through. I could carry that straight through with her. She's always going to be curious. And it's going to kind of save her a little bit, because the other two character traits that start out in the base position, honesty, which is self-acceptance in this case, again, as Julianne mentioned, we use it rather technically. When what we colloquially talk about honesty, we're really talking about sincerity, which is, are we straightforward with others? And it is also a starting base trait for Teresita. But what's strange about these two, and I think Julianne had a trait that was like this, they've never been tested, in part because Teresita has never thought to question her abilities and where she comes from. And it has never occurred to her that she could be other than totally honest with someone else. So then when this Act 2 event occurs, which Julianne referred to, she's going to be thrown for a loop, and suddenly these traits are going to flip into her sincerity is going to be, it's going to have moments of doubt, and then her honesty is going to go smack into the rudder position. She's going to have to make a choice about whether she's going to be self-accepting or just blowing up. Well, one of her wing traits that she's got is self-control. She's, and patience for her is a rudder trait. She can choose to be patient. Well, when she gets into a situation where she might blow up with self-control, she uses patience, or the ability to choose patience to get her self-control under control. So that's going to show a little bit about how the traits interact. But other than that, mine isn't nearly as fleshed out as Julianne's, but I really thank you, Julianne, for the wonderful wiki. I've never had the practice of entering anything in a wiki before, and I found it very easy to use. So I thank you for that as well. I'll stop sharing now.
Nice.
Okay. So that was the first assignment. We had a second assignment as well. And is this what you were referring to, Julianne, or did you have something to add before we move on to the
I
second?
actually do have something to add. So it's about the Sentries, because I've shared the beginning of this story where we meet Jenna and and her family, and they're going to this place where they're going to help a newlywed couple build their house. And we in that part of the story, we refer to how do people know each other, right? And so Jenna's parents are part of this group called the Sentries, and so are Chris's parents, and this is the house that they are at. And we learn in the story that that Jenna has more than passing interest in Chris, and the feeling is mutual. And their parents are in the Sentries, and they've been kids together, running around when their parents are having these meetings, these Sentry meetings, and most of it's just terribly boring to the kids. But what are the Sentries all about? So I added to the character page, and I'll just read it here. Something about the Sentries. And, well, actually, I'm going to share my screen because this is a cool thing to know you can do. And that is, you can upload images. And so I'm sharing the raw story card of this little thing about the Sentries. So the tagline is, Sentries are white hat hackers of possible vaporware. So the backstory is that the people who were invited to come test this game found themselves in an unknown world, and they self-organized into various teams based on their skill sets. And the Sentries are essentially trying to figure out what's going on here based on some affinity with computer design. They're kind of viewing, they don't know where the world ends, or where the interface between this planet that they're on and the game. They don't know where, what the boundaries are, but they are trying to figure out, well, if I were going to build this, what would I build? So they're like a white hat hacker in our current world is somebody who tries to expose the vulnerabilities of a website or an application without the idea of taking advantage of them, but actually just protecting it from itself. Let the people who build this system know, oh, you've got a vulnerability, and here's how I can do some havoc on you. So those are white hat hackers. And white hat hackers are the way that most of the vulnerabilities that we know about, we do know about, because there are more of them. Thank God. But anyway, so they're taking this tack of being white hat hackers, and they are trying to hack the game, which includes trying to figure out even what's game and what isn't. The ancestors seem to have left clues to help them, And as of the opening scene, the Sentries are testing a hypothesis that the game rewards asking questions. And so in a lot of the dialogue that we have with Jenna and her father, he apologizes when he's gone off on a monologue and not asked questions. And when she asks questions and it's a bad question, she's kind of punishes herself. That was a terrible question. Right. So they're really focusing on asking questions. And there is the further implication if the game is somehow rewarding asking questions, there's the further implication. Well, the questions are an expression of curiosity. Does the game reward that? And how will we even test that? So they're viewing this the way, you might view any system that you're trying to understand and explore. So that's who they are, and it explains some of the activities. And she's monitoring a feed. She's got her mentee Sunny, who is going through the protocol of figuring out what kind of mood Lydia is in, Lydia the planet.
Yeah.
So all of that is in service of this Sentry team's mission to try to figure out what's going on here in the way that they feel best suited to do it. And their view, the Sentries, it's not like everybody's a Sentry or even thinks that being a Sentry is a worthy activity, because there are plenty of people on the same planet who arrived at the same time who don't view it this way at all. They view it as this game it was vaporware. We were pulled onto this planet and we're stuck here now, and screw them, So there are going to be all sorts, there'll be a spectrum of attitudes toward where they are and what they're doing, and the Sentries. So this is a little bit of an antagonistic force for the Sentries as a whole.
Interesting. And of course, the existence of white hat hackers just begs the question, are there going to be any black hat hackers showing up?
There would have to be, I would think. There's always somebody who even for the fun of it,
Yeah.
what can I exploit here?
Well, the second question is, we are, of course, writing with our plus ones. We aren't writing all by ourselves. And so the second question was to talk about how a card or cards in our Zettelkasten, you can pull it or not as you like, but talk a little bit about how your Zettelkasten delivers something up for you that either informs the location where your character is acting and her environment, his or her environment, or that informs the character of your character. Who would like to start us off on that idea?
Well, Kathleen, it might just be you and me today on this one.
Okay.
So
I was going to say, actually, I can speak to this a little bit.
Oh, awesome.
Because, as you know, my Zettelkasten lives over there now instead of within reach. So I don't have a 12-foot long arm, so I'll have to talk you through it. But when I wrote the piece, it's been, I think it was in maybe February, about the artifacts. We had a session where we talked about the kinds of things that either the characters, which in my mind I call them the players, to kind of keep it in context for myself when I think about the story. So the kinds of artifacts that the players might find that could point them in either a direction of something they want to pursue, so it's a going towards, or maybe something that they don't want to touch, so it's going away. So I was kind of thinking, as I pulled the cards about these items, what I was thinking was different ways of introducing not necessarily conflict, but points that have the players choose. It's either this direction or it's that direction. So when I wrote the piece about the jars, the character that I was working with was Alex, who that's kind of the character that I've been working on. She is very curious about the satellites and the system around the world and how that works and what it means, why they do the things that they do and how they move. In my mind, I think of her as kind of like a prototype of Copernicus, in that she's just fascinated with the movement of things and why. She's very, very curiosity driven. And so in terms of anchoring her in those traits, a curiosity about the world around her is one of her primary drivers. So the cards that I pulled were, first of all, about canoptic jars, which were artifacts known to contain mummies. So I want to bring that thread into the world in a way that in the piece I wrote, she has come across these jars and she can't read anything on it. Knowing that language is a critical piece of this world and the way that it's used, I like the idea of how the language expands and contracts, both internally for the characters and as part of the world. So the thread that I tugged on for the piece that I wrote and tying that going forward was the fact that this artifact that she has uncovered, she can't read it. It has all these things on it that she doesn't know what they are. And in my mind, that ties the thing celestial, but she doesn't know why yet. So she's very much obsessed with figuring out, what do these things mean? So in my cards, I pulled for the story 1100, 1101, and 1102. 1100 are pressings, so things about items that have been pressed to be preserved. 1101 is the seeds, and 1102 is detailed diagrams. Now, readers that have been with us from pretty much the beginning may recall that we first meet Alex when someone is looking out into a garden and she goes out there and finds this Zettelkasten box, and it has all these things in it: pressings of plants, packets of seeds, detailed diagrams of how things are laid out. And she immediately lays down in the garden and is looking up at the sky and wondering, this all fits together, it all means something, and it's tied to language, but I don't know why. So those are the pieces that I'm kind of holding in my part of the story as I listen to how other people are pushing their characters. That's the piece that I will continue to pull on, which is she's looking at all of these loops and symbols on this artifact, and she's trying to figure out, how does this correspond to what's in this box of notes? And why is that important for what's around us and what that means? So those are the pieces that I'm kind of holding in reserve to see how she's going to fit. I see her fitting a lot in with what Javi is doing. In the underground library, because she's going to have to talk to someone. She's going to have to seek out information to start, piecing this together. So I anticipate that the two of them will have a meetup at some point in the not too distant future. And that's going to help either give her a piece of information, or it's going to help her puzzle things out in such a way that she comes to a conclusion about what this macro system means and what her little piece of it is. So that's what I can say for sure.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you.
Nope.
All right. Well, Julianne?
Sure. So mine's a little thing. So this is a character that I have mentioned amongst the authors, and it's going to appear in the first that first scene where they're building the house. But that character is Jenna's grandmother, and Gran is how we know her, but she insists, call me Goofy. And she she communicates mostly through puppets. She always has a couple of puppets, and her puppets can take on different roles. And they ask pertinent questions. And basically she's always she's always asking questions either in her own voice or in the puppet's voice. And the choice of the puppet is, it's a minor spoiler, but I'll just leave it. That, which one she uses and why she's choosing that puppet. There's a reason behind it. But at this at where they're designing this house, she pipes up with some comment. She asks a question. She asks a very interesting question at the moment, which we'll get to at another time. But Jenna, after they figure out the answer to that question that she asked, Jenna says, "Gran, I didn't see you here." And Gran asks, "Where were you looking?" And Jenna, Malcolm, and Marjorie all say, as though they have said this many times before, "Where you weren't." So this is a family running joke. Didn't see you here. Where were you looking? Where you weren't. And in the card, I've just got Gran's long-running family joke, and Gran enjoys the reputation of offbeat spookiness.
I want that on a Christmas card to send out every year.
Said a grandmother.
Right?
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, for mine, the card that I pulled came from Timeless Way of Building by Christopher Alexander. And it specifically refers to an area or a space that's semi-public and semi-private, often a terrace raised a bit above the level of the street, where a person can go out into the space and maybe sit down and be completely invisible to the street, but be able to hear what's going on, or stand up, in which case head and shoulders would be visible to the street, and he can peer out and possibly converse with people that are going on. So the idea behind it is also the concept of maybe that you might see in a European town where someone has an apartment over a cafe or across the street from a cafe. The idea is that you have a place where you can be in your own private space. Nobody has a right to be there unless you invite them to be there, and yet you're overlooking the public area. And for Teresita, that is her favorite kind of place. Likes to observe what's going on quietly from her own quiet retreat. So that is the kind of space that she tends to go towards, is if she can find any kind of an alcove area adjacent to where people are working. And this is especially a fond area when the researchers are studying this massive Zettelkasten that is this big artifact of the ancestors, and trying to figure out what's going on. And it's in this big area on this tile floor. And so she tends to nestle maybe under the stairs so that she is got a sheltering roof above her. The tile floor is below her, and she can look at what people are doing quietly without being in the walkway or without being interfering with anyone. And of course, that's going to be a scene where she's going to make an important discovery about the tiles, namely that they can be removed, and there are little recesses underneath the tiles that can hold interesting things.
Nice.
Yeah, that's nice. I love the specificity of that, matching it to a particular character and what kind of place they gravitate toward. That's really genius.
And thank you to Christopher Alexander, and particularly also in a pattern language, he talks about a Frank Lloyd Wright house that has that exact configuration. It has a wall that's high enough for the terrace that if you sit down, you're completely invisible. And if you stand up, or in some cases, if you bring about a stool and stand on the stool, if you're short as I am, then you can see outside. Wow, well, thank you all so much for participating in our fun. But we have a place where you can come to have even more fun. It's called lilypub.org. This is where we all hang out together. And there's a space in lilypub.org called the Roanoke Project. And you can join that space if you are a member of LilyPub. There's no extra charge. Your LilyPub dues will get you access to that space and a whole bunch of other spaces that you can explore over in lilypub.org. And if you're not up for actually joining us in LilyPub, come visit our website, lilypub.org. Anyway, you can get on the mailing list for the Roanoke Project and have access to our public area where we share non-spoiler information. And also on lilypub.org, you can find Deb's magnificent worksheet. Come on over to lilypub.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.